Welcome to another episode of the Hot Genius podcast. Today's episode is called For Those Who Are Downward Spiraling. I hope that you can really enjoy this episode and come back to it whenever you feel like you've been triggered, you've been in a downward spiral, because I've refined this technique over the course of 10 years and I've been excited as hell to share this with you. I've made it as simple as possible. We're going to go over the 3 simple steps, and then I'll explain why it works, how it works, and how you can right now, after this episode, just pull yourself out of this rut, pull yourself out of this downward spiral so you can change the direction of the momentum in a way that works out for you instead of it doing your head in. So let's get straight into it. So the 3 steps are: number 1, forgive; number 2, smile; and number 3, positivity. So let's understand how this all works, because I know it sounds really simple, but just remember that the most genius or ingenious things ever, things that truly work in life, are the things that are simple. It's the ego that wants everything to be complicated, and so that's why we usually miss the steps that we need to take. We think that it can't be this easy, like surely it's not this easy, and then we don't do it. So let's start with number 1. So forgive. When it comes to forgiveness, it is so important to see this as a way of life. And so these steps, by the way, are also for prevention. So you can, if you're literally having the time of your life, still follow these 3 steps, and this will make sure you are constantly and consistently having the time of your life. And so it just happens to work in any situation. It works when you're downward spiraling as well. But anyway, so when it comes to forgiveness, what I was saying is that we go to the toilet, right? We got to go to the toilet. We shower every day to remove the germs of our body. Cool. Forgiveness is the energetic, emotional, and mental shower and poop that we need to take every day, that we need to have every single day, no matter what. And so, again, regardless of whether you are currently spiraling right now or whether you are feeling fine, this is still a very important life skill, because let me tell you what happens when you don't do this, right? Go back to this analogy of you showering every day. You shower every day because you need to cleanse your body, because throughout the day you've picked up on germs and you've been sweating and all the things, yeah? Well, it's no different when it comes to our emotions and our energy. So when you had a weird tone to your child, and then 2 minutes after that you accidentally had too much caffeine, and then after that you accidentally bought something you shouldn't have, and then you accidentally cut someone off the road. Throughout the day you're picking up on a lot of guilt. You're picking up on a lot of things that you did that you just sort of think nothing of. But over 24 hours or 12 hours, that's a lot of shit to compound. And if you don't make this a practice, and you're, let's say, 31, you've got 31 years of energetic and emotional shit that you've never pushed out. So you're energetically constipated, or it's you're smelly because you haven't showered. And so forgiveness is the water that you're going to use to cleanse your mind, to cleanse your emotion, and to cleanse your energy. And so how you do this is that when you see forgiveness, I want you to imagine it as something that is so easy that you might struggle with it because of how easy it is. But the best way I like to describe it is simply 2 things. Forgiveness equals intention of letting go plus acknowledging that you are angry at yourself. That's it. So once again, forgiveness is the intention of letting go plus acknowledging your feelings, or acknowledging you're angry at yourself. And so let's try this right now together. Let's do this, right? I want you to think of anything that you're just pissed off at yourself for, okay? And maybe you can't think of anything, or maybe there's too many that you don't know what to choose from. Either way, if you've got too much, I want you to be all right, just see the too much as one thing, okay? So for example, this is my favorite version of it anyway, I sort of just, when I do this and let's say haven't done it in a while, I go, okay, everything that I've done to piss myself off for the last year, I like see it. And then I go, it's my intention to let this go. And when you have that intention to let go, essentially that's intention to love yourself, because forgiveness requires a lot of courage, and courage requires love, And so when you have that intention letting go, half the work is done. So you're already halfway there. And then so I want you to see that, and then now acknowledge that you're pissed off, that you've been pissed off with yourself. Start seeing it, but like, I have really just not been the person that I wanted to be in the last year, or today, or for this week, or I didn't like how I conducted myself last night in that meeting. I was a bit of a fucking hoe or a bitch or whatever, right? Like, just acknowledge. Number one, the way to forgive truly, right? To utilize this energetic water, so to speak, to cleanse you is, number one, have the intention of letting go and loving yourself, right? And number two is just acknowledge that you're just you've been very unhappy with yourself. You've been dissatisfied. You're disappointed in yourself. All right, that's it. And then as you do those two steps, what happens now is that you have no choice but to let it go. It's done. It's your choice. It's that simple. It doesn't have to be a whole ritual and ceremony. You don't have to go and make it a big deal. But it is a big deal. I'm just saying that it doesn't have to be more complicated than it is, because it's actually quite simple. It's a choice. And if you struggle with this, and it's probably because like your ego might have a hard time of realizing that it was actually that easy. Our egos have a hard time to understand that the solution is actually much faster, simpler, and more pleasant than the pain of the problem took. If the problem or the feelings of guilt and shame went on for 5 years and you released it in a few minutes, you can see how your ego has a big problem with that. It's gonna, and so to that, what I have to say is that just acknowledge that, have that awareness, and just let it go anyway. Just take this as a win. See it as, well, this is amazing that letting go is actually not hard. Oh my God, I can do this all the time. It's so easy, So anyway, so that's step one. I actually want to quickly share, because I forgot, why this is actually really powerful. So if you think of the if you think of the vibrational chart, so it's pretty much a chart that describes the frequency that each emotion has, yeah? So most people think that at the bottom, it's negative emotion, and at the top, it's positive emotion, when that's not accurate. That's a judgment. To say something is negative, positive in this context is a judgment. So we want to see this neutrally, like a genius, right? And so the proper way to look at this is that the lowest emotion is in that chart is actually dense energy, and the higher you go up, the more light the energy is, and the more free-flowing it is, and that's what people usually refer to as positive. And so in this chart, people think that at the bottom, the most densest energy, or aka the most negative energy or emotion, is hatred or something, or anger, and that's not true. The lowest, most densest energy and emotional state a human could possibly live in is actually, drumroll please, guilt. And so when you cut someone off the road, lose your temper to your child, and eat 3 packets of chips in one night, you're living in guilt. And so you are literally in the most densest emotional vibration you could possibly be in. And so doesn't that make sense as to why it's so easy to spiral when we don't catch ourselves the moment we fuck up? Because when we fuck up and we just ignore it and we don't regulate that emotion, we don't practice instant, clean as you go, self-forgiveness, that shit compounds over time. And we don't want that. And so forgiveness is the antidote to that. And that's why I was saying that this is a lifestyle. This is a lifestyle. It's prevention. It's not just, I guess, the medicine. It's just the way of being, so that you don't even need to get to a point where you're spiraling as often anyway, or if ever, if you really master it. So anyway, number 1 is forgive. Number 2 is smile. Now, boo, do not underestimate this. Please do not underestimate this. And just remember again, it's usually the simple shit that works. So let me explain why smiling is so fucking powerful. I'm so passionate about this if it's not obvious. All right, let me explain. When we smile, we literally release neurotransmitters. For real. Let me tell you what we release. We release dopamine, we release endorphins, we release serotonin, we release chemicals, we release freaking hormones, neurotransmitters. Something is physically and biologically and chemically taking place when we smile. And let me quickly explain what those three fancy words actually mean for you. So we'll start with endorphins. Endorphins elevate our mood. They make us feel good. They make us feel pleasure. And you know what my favorite part is? Is that endorphins actually are our body's natural painkillers. It literally is like Panadol with no side effects, and it's free. And you got to do is smile, and just so we're clear, when you have an orgasm, that you release endorphins as well. Right? So just to give you something to look forward to, you can have similar chemical effects in your brain, okay, from smiling. And I don't just mean like smiling for uno secondo. I'm talking about smiling, like making that your freaking baseline. Like that's going to be your new exercise because you're going to be utilizing that muscle. That's where I'm at right now in my life, by the way. Let me quickly explain, and then we'll go over the other two. Is that I want to share this with you as a side note, right? ADHD things. And it's that when growing up, I don't know how much you know about me, but growing up, I battled a lot of mental illness. And one of those things is, really intense depression. And what happens with people, I thought this would be really good for you to know, whether you relate to this or whether you know someone who has experienced chronic depression, whether they are recovered or not yet, is that when you, like, as an example with me, when me or anyone else live a life of like mostly being depressed, like you spend like 15, 20 years being depressed, then our facial muscles change. Because, for example, what's normal is that when we frown, we're supposed to be like utilizing like more energy to frown. Okay. And then when we smile, that's supposed to use less energy, right? But someone with depression, that's not the case. Like for me, I'm recovered now mostly, but I meant like for most of my life I was depressed, yeah? So I was frowning for most of my life. So smiling for me physically hurts my face. It physically hurts to smile, like for real. And it's because my muscles are just not, my face is not accustomed to it. So I've been like, when you go to the gym and you're just like trying to work out your muscles, or you're like learning to become like flexible as fuck. Like I'm doing that with my face. I'm just saying. But unfortunately, if one of the things that can happen if you go through a long period of time in your life where you don't smile much for whatever reason, maybe just like me, like you went through mental illness, PTSD, and etc. What happens is that we forget to smile, and so it doesn't become our natural state to or reaction to express in our face, And just as a side note, because I love to be teachable, and it's that people who are autistic struggle with this even more. And by the way, if you don't know me, I'm also autistic. And so one of the things about being autistic is that we don't express ourselves the same as most people. So I've got like, it's extra hard for me to smile. That's why when you see a lot of autistic people, like sometimes we just look really angry, but we're not. It's just that we forget to smile. So I've got those two elements that I have to sort of overcome. And I'm still doing it. Okay, and it's hard, but like it's worth it. And every day that I like work out my smiling muscle, okay, I get better at it. It gets easier. And yeah, so going back to the like what smiling literally, physically, chemically does to your body. We already know endorphins. It literally makes you feel pleasure. It's like having a freaking orgasm. Just smile, okay? And smile for a long period of time. The next thing it does is releases dopamine. Now, I have ADHD, and if in case you know someone who's ADHD or you have it, remember ADHD, the reason why I'm bringing this up, because there's a point, I promise, is that essentially I want you to think of ADHD as like a dopamine disorder, because it should be called that in my opinion. That's all it is, okay? And so dopamine is responsible for alertness, for motivation, and for, many other things that are surrounding our ability to have a normal, to function, to our executive functioning, like time management, perception, organization, like all these things, right? And so when we smile, we release dopamine. And the reason why you'll hear me bring up ADHD a lot, not because I'm just literally talking about ADHD, is that when you can, if you and Bob and Julie can understand ADHD, guess what? You get to understand everyone's brain, including your own, because it's not about that condition. It's that if we can see ADHD as a dopamine disorder, then you can understand that pretty much whatever will help an ADHD person will help anyone else, will help a non-ADHD person. It will just help the different people differently. It will help someone without ADHD a little bit faster and easier because you've already got dopamine distributing properly throughout your day. And so smiling releases dopamine. The next thing it releases is serotonin. Serotonin, it's next level. It's like, that's why people with depression, like, I'm not into, medication, but like the medication that is usually prescribed is, serotonin inhibitors and all this shit, right? So like serotonin actually helps alleviate depression and anxiety and stress, and this is once again without taking any medication. Like your brain, your body has its own pharmaceutical company working for you. And the trick here is to learn how to gain access to that and to do it simply, because we want it to be easy and fun, right? We don't want it to be annoying. And so, yeah, smile. That's step 2. So let's go over the steps so far. Number 1 is forgive. Number 2 is smile. Now, the last step is positivity, but let me explain. When I say positivity, I don't mean the annoying toxic positivity. I'm talking proper positivity, not toxic positivity. And so let's just quickly go over what toxic positivity even is. Toxic positivity is when someone is pretending to be happy when they're not. So if someone is like really, really, really suffering on the inside and they just go, nah, I'm just going to smile. Nothing's wrong. Everything's fine. And then they see someone else like crying. They're like, no, just be positive. It's okay. Your cat died. Just be positive. Like, this is toxic positivity. Yeah. This is not what I'm talking about. No. We do not want that over here, boo. But actual positivity is many things, but essentially it's, of course, acknowledging where you are. It's acknowledging. If you feel sad, acknowledge it. Cry it out if you have to. But being positive, right, truly being positive is allowing yourself to be positive about the negative experiences in your life. Write that down. Let me say it again. Being positive is being positive about the negative experiences and feelings in your life. So what I mean by this is that, once again, if you feel sad, boo, give yourself full permission to cry if you need to cry. If you're angry, feel it, regulate your emotion. And don't hate yourself for it. That's what I mean about being positive about your negative feelings, even though I don't like that word. But whatever, you get my point. For the sake of this conversation, we'll keep it simple. Like, it's not about, like, someone who's positive, right? When they are angry or while they are feeling sad, they don't hate themselves for being angry. They don't hate themselves for being sad. So let's just begin there. Now that we know what positive is and isn't, now we can go and how you can, like, utilize this for the sake of you getting out of your rut, getting out of your downward spiral. And so let's preface this with this, is that our brains have a negativity bias. And all that pretty much means is that when you do nothing, when you do absolutely nothing, you just go about your day, you don't go out of your way to put in effort into what goes into your head, you will be negative. No matter if your soul and your personality is positive, you will be negative, because it's just how the brain has evolved. The being negative, so to speak, is just a survival mechanism. That's all it is. Because the reason why the brain evolved into this is because if we're negative, if our brain is like naturally, its factory settings, you could say, is wired towards picking up threats and potential danger, right, aka negativity, you could say, then it's upping our chances of survival. That's all it is, right? It's just that we've just come to a place of human evolution where We don't really have to be that negative anymore, but our brains haven't caught up. And this is where you come in. You get to be a part of human evolution. By you upgrading your brain and rewiring it, because we can, okay, we don't have to stay in the factory settings of our brain, then you actually start being an evolved kind of human, literally. And how can we do this? Well, first, it's understanding that that's how this works. It's understanding that if you do nothing, like, please don't ever forget this. If you do nothing, no matter how positive you want to be, no matter how much you've got, like, desire for, like, happiness, if you do nothing, you don't put in any effort in your mind, in your thinking, in your mindset, then you will just be negative. Because it's your factory setting. And so start there. And the next thing is that it's time to make it your number one priority. Your number one priority to make your mindset like positive as fuck. Like brainwashing your brain into being the most optimistic person on the planet, essentially. Having that attitude and making that your first number one priority before anything. Because if you can do this, then it gets easier over time. Again, it's like anything else. It's like a muscle. The more you repeat, the more you practice, the easier it gets. And it is an investment of your time and effort, and it is probably the best investment, in my opinion, you could ever possibly make for yourself. But in the context of you right now being like having gone through a downward spiral, here's how you can physically and practically take that action. And what I mean is that right this moment, when I say positivity, I want you to either talk yourself up, like remember how before I said that when you do nothing mentally, it would just be negative as a default setting? So what we're doing here is that we're changing that default setting and we're customizing it, right? Customizing your mind. And so how you're going to do that is if you were like maybe prior to this episode when you were spiraling, you might have had thoughts, automatic thoughts, not conscious ones that you put in effort in, where you might be like, oh, I'm so fat, or I'm so mean. Why does bad things always happen to me? I suck at everything I do, blah, 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 like whatever they are. Now, it's not like disregarding that, because we've already taken the first two steps. You've already forgiven yourself and you've been smiling, and I'm hoping you're smiling right now. Keep your smile there. I know you're going to feel weird and awkward. That's completely normal. But just do it anyway. we freaking cry over nothing sometimes, right? So why can't we smile over nothing? We deserve to give life meaning. We are the creators of our realities, right? So keep smiling as you're listening to this, even though it feels hard. But brainwash yourself into positivity. So what I mean is that, let's say before I was saying like you had those thoughts, I want you to be like, I'm beautiful. I am in charge of my life. No one's coming to save me. I've got this. I might not know everything right now, but I have the willingness to learn. I've got this. I'm so gorgeous. I'm so nurturing. I'm really good at this. I'm enough. I'm worthy. I've got this. And as you're saying these things to yourself for the first like minute, you're just going to feel like you're lying, essentially, right? It's going to feel forced. And what happens is that a lot of people, they start to like give up on this because they think that it feeling forced means it's wrong or something. And it's not true. It feels forced because your factory settings are working against you. Remember, your factory settings of your mind is to be negative because it's how our brains evolve. That's all. So let it feel forced. Now, the next step that's very important, and the only way positive thoughts can actually work, is that now when you're saying those words, I need you to believe them. That's it. Just believe them. And I know that sounds like a little bit overly simplified, but don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. So what I mean is that, for example, you say, I am worthy, I am gorgeous. But let's say when you looked in the mirror 5 minutes ago, you didn't feel those feelings. Okay? What I want you to do is remember, you've already forgiven yourself. Okay? So you've already let that go. You're smiling. And it's you going, I'm going to feel gorgeous and worthy, even though my mind does not believe it, even though my mind doesn't see it, I'm going to feel it anyway. Why not? I'm going to feel it anyway. And it's developing this attitude and this grit, right? And just do that and start thinking and really immerse yourself in it. Start thinking of all the moments where you did feel gorgeous. Start thinking of the moments where you did feel worthy. Start thinking of the moments where a miracle happened. Start thinking of moments where you had so much joy and so much courage. Think and flood your mind and your emotion with those things. And that's what I mean when I say brainwash yourself into positivity and give yourself an even playing ground, because you have been possibly just existing in your default settings, or maybe you've done this work before. The chances are, if you're listening to this show, you're already a practitioner of this stuff. I'm sure of it, right? But maybe the reason why you keep going back and forth is because you didn't fully allow yourself to immerse in this. And maybe when it got hard, you got confused and you didn't know if it was worth it. And I'm here to tell you it's worth it, and it works. It absolutely works. Yeah? And it's not about shaming yourself. Remember, step 1, you already forgave yourself. You already have acknowledged that you're exactly who and where you're meant to be right in this moment. And so positivity is supposed to feel awkward at the beginning. And it only truly works when you, as the CEO of your life, actually signs off on it being true. Like, you have to give those thoughts consent. If you just say to yourself, I'm gorgeous, I'm worthy, I've got this, I'm powerful, I'm grateful, I love my life, even if you literally don't, right? If you just say it, of course, nothing more is going to happen. But you have to give yourself consent. Sign off on it and be like, all right, I feel what I feel. I just said what I said. Now I'm going to fucking believe it, because I am a bad bitch in charge of my life and my mind and my emotions. And simply, that's how you can do it, how you can snap out of your, downward spiral right now. And you can do this over and over again. I would recommend following those 3 steps of forgiveness and smiling and then positivity just as your general lifestyle. Maybe do it, put an alarm on your phone every hour to literally do this every hour. Because the more often you do it, the better you get at it, the more you are able to remember to do it, and the easier it simply gets, and the less you will ever spiral. And it's a practice. So the actual steps in itself are simple. I guess the part that's a little bit of a challenge is actually committing to it forever. But it doesn't have to be hard. And just know that you've got this. And I really hope that this episode and these steps have in some way inspired you and empowered you, reminded you of your power, and helped you snap out of that downward spiral so that you can let go of every single moment up until this moment, so you get to start a new moment and create new momentum and use this as an opportunity to break through, because most breakthroughs begin with the downward spiral anyway. And so you might as well milk it for all that it has, and always know that you are enough as you are, and that you truly are meant to be exactly where you are right this moment, and that you have always had the power in your hands. So much love, Boo, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye.